Hello, in this video we'll be making a simple login interface using Jetpack Compose. So the user will be able to enter their credentials. For example, here, password, they can view it if they want. Check the remember me button and log in. And if they enter the right credentials, they will be able to go to a main activity like this. So let's go ahead and do that. Here I have an empty Jetpack Compose project with the default main activity. Let's customize the preview before we start our login form. So here I'm going to set the Nexus 1 device. I can show the system UI and I'm gonna duplicate this and add dark for the dark theme. So here the dark theme is true. It's not going to be much difference as the surface is not defined in the method itself. I'm going to add it here, so surface. This is going to display it right away. There you go. Now let's add a column to center everything up. So here set text, and inside the column I'm going to add a vertical arrangement to center and horizontal alignment to center horizontally. This is going to center everything in the middle. And let's just call greetings here instead. Let's remove this, call it here. There you go. Now we're gonna create an activity. Call it login activity. So here, new activity, empty views activity. I'm gonna call it login activity. We don't need a layout. Change the activity to component activity and set content. We're going to call my login application theme and here call login form. So this is going to be defined. Let's create a package, interfaces, and inside this package I'm going to create a Kotlin file. I'm going to call it login form, and here I'm going to create a composable function login form, and inside I'm just going to add text just like this, just for the preview. Let's go to main activity and copy the preview that we have set up. Let's import that, avoid any issues. Alright, here's our preview. I'm going to replace greeting with login form everywhere. Change this, remove this import. And let's check the preview. Alright, that's good. Now let's set up a surface. And inside that surface, I'm going to add a column. So here, column. And inside the column, basically we're going to have our field. So text fields, basically we're going to start with the login field. And then we're going to have a password field. Then we can use a spacer, but let's keep that for later. A labeled checkbox. And at the end, we're going to have a button. I'm gonna first comment everything, and let's start one by one. For the login field, I'm gonna call composable function. And here we are basically going to define our login field. We're gonna use text field, so text field here. We're gonna define the value and onChange as parameters to the function here. So value string and onChange is function, so string unit. Let's pass these as parameters here and on change here. You're gonna have to opt in. Let's do this because we're gonna have to add more properties. So I'm going to add a modifier. So modifier here equals to modifier, and I'm gonna pass this modifier as a parameter. Modifier. And then I'm going to define a leading icon, which is going to be basically the icon before the text field. So here, val leading icon equals a composable icon. And here I'm going to import that. For the icon, I'm going to use icons.default.person. And for the content description, I'm going to set it to an empty string. And for the tint, I'm going to use material theme dot color scheme, and I'm going to use the primary color. Then I'm going to add some other properties, but first let's go up here and add the necessary attributes. So for the value, I'm going to say data for now, and for the on change, I'm going to add an empty function so that we can see that in the preview. All right, let's opt in. Just wait for it to load. There is our text field showing in both light mode and dark mode. And yeah, let's add more properties and then align everything later. So the next property is keyboard actions. So keyboard actions. Here we are going to set up the actions that are going to be performed when the user clicks on the bottom right corner button. So here, keyboard actions. We're going to set up an on next because this is the login field and we want the user to move to the next field. So here we're gonna use a focus manager that we're gonna define. Right here, focus manager equals to local focus manager.current. So let's use this to move the focus to the next one, which is the element at the bottom, so down. I'm going to add here an action keyboard. So keyboard options. And here keyboard options IME action. It's going to be next because we want to change the button to next, and then we're going to intercept that to change the focus to the element at the bottom. Then we're going to define a placeholder and a label. So here text placeholder, define that or add that as a parameter in a bit. Label, let's do the same here. So label is string. For example, we can set it first to login, and for the placeholder, it's also a string. You can set it to enter your login. Let's set this text field to single line, so single line equals to true, and let's add a visual transformation to none. We're gonna need that later for the password field. All right, this looks good. Now the next thing would be to set up the password field. Let's do that here. So that's his password field. It's going to be slightly different, so let's change those first. Password, and then the leading icon would be different. It's going to be, we're going to use a key But for that, we're going to need to extend the default icons by going to build Gradle, and we're going to have to add a new line. Let me just get it. So it's going to be this. I'm going to sync the project. And back to our login, I'm going to change this to key. Keep the same thing as they are. And for the password, let me just load this in here. Let's move this comment here. For the value password on change, set it the same way so we can see the preview. Okay, we're gonna have to force it. So this is our password. Basically, we're gonna need to add the button here at the end so that the user can view or hide their password. And since it's going to be a change, we're gonna use a variable is password visible by remember. And here I'm going to add, let me first import that, might cause some problems. And here mutable state of, first the password will not be visible, so let's set that to false. And here for the password field, the button is going to be done, and here we're going to change on next to on done, and here we're going to call a new method that we're going to call submit, and this method is going to be passed as a parameter like so. Alright, now let's import that, and let's change the visual transformation. Basically here we're going to set if password is visible is going to be none, and if not, it's going to be hidden. So if password is visible, set it to this, else it's going to be, I think it's password visual transformation. Yeah. All right. So that looks about right. We don't need a focus manager right now. And yeah, we're gonna need a trailing icon to add it. So here, I'm gonna duplicate this trailing icon. It's going to be a composable. For the icon, it's going to be an icon button. Let's set the icon to visibility. And here, the button click would basically change the is password visible. Let's move that up a little bit. So is password visible equals to not password visible, and the icon would also change. So if password is visible, we're gonna change to visibility false, else it's going to be icons dot default dot visibility alone. All right, and let's add this trailing icon here. See if we missed something. Looks about right. Let's go back here. See, you have an error. Yep, here we need submit. And let's refresh that. I should be able to add the button here in the right corner. Alright, there you go. So we have the password is hidden and the button. If we change the default value to true, it should show the password, and here it's going to be slash. That's good. Alright, let's set that back. And now let's set up our data class that is going to hold our data. So here, data class, I'm gonna call it credentials, and here var login, it's going to be string, set it to empty string, and then var pwd for password, string equals to this, and var is visible. It's a boolean, set it to false. Alright, we'll need to add this var credentials by remember mutable state off, and it's going to be a new object credential. Then we're gonna pass these as parameters, so credentials.login. Here is going to be credential.password. For the change, basically the credentials would be we're gonna need the data. So credentials equals to credentials.copy, and the login is the one that is going to change. So login equals to data. Let's copy this and put it in here. This case is for the password. And yeah, now let's set up the labeled checkbox. So let's do that here too. So composable function labeled checkbox. This should not be difficult. So first let's create a row so that we don't have elements that are mixed up. So we're gonna have multiple elements. First one is the checkbox, and the second one is a spacer. It's just modifier dot size, give it 6 dp, import that, import a spacer, and then for the text we're going to have a label that we're going to pass as parameter here. So label string, and on check changed is going to be this unit, and is checked is a boolean. Alright, let's pass this as a parameter here. This is going to be null because we're gonna move the click to the row itself. So on click, alright, so I think I need a modifier for that. So here modifier dot clickable, I think. Alright, so clickable, and here on click, we're gonna pass this on check change. Just need to add a C here that I forgot. And let's just add a padding here, padding of maybe just 4 dp. Alright, let's go up and call the label checkbox. For the label, I'm just gonna add remember me. For the onCheck change, it's basically going to be the same as this, but the difference is going to be in the is visible. I think I need to change this attribute to credential that is visible. That's not is visible, this is remember. Alright, this is label, and this is on check change, and we need credentials dot remember. Alright, that looks good. For the remember is checked equals to that. Alright, that looks good. Now we're gonna add some spacers just to clean the display. So here spacer modifier dot height, let's give it 10 dp, and we're gonna add another spacer after the label, 20 dp for the button. So there and there. The button should have a text here, login, for example. And this button is basically going to call check, or just check credentials. That we're going to pass the credentials as a parameter. Going to have to define this function too. So function creds is of type credentials. Alright, now let's just add some other properties to the button here. Let's add enabled. Oh, it's not here. Here enabled equals to, basically we're going to check if the credentials is not empty. Now I have to define this method here inside the is not empty. So return login.is not empty and pwd.is not empty. Alright, this basically should be able to disable the button when this is not empty. So you can see it disabled here. And shape, let's add a corner, rounded corner shape, 5 dp, and for the width, let's add a modifier dot fill max width. Let's see how that looks like. Alright, now we'll just need to add the modifier here, the same modifier for the labeled checkbox. Let's add it at the end. And sorry, for the password, for the login. And the submit here should also call the check credentials. Alright, so this is how it looks like. Let's align everything in the column. So vertical arrangement center, horizontal alignment center horizontally. This should make it look a little bit cleaner. And then let's add modifier dot fill max size, and then let's give it a padding of 30 horizontal. I can't write. Horizontal of 30 dp. This should be much cleaner for the interface. Okay. Now for the check credentials, basically I'm going to check if the credentials is not empty and credentials.login equals to admin, lowercase. So if that's the case, we're going to open the main activity. To do that, I'm going to need a context. So while context is equals to local context.current, and we're going to have to pass this as a parameter to our method here and here. So let's add that parameter. So let's refactor. And here context.start activity. For the intent, it's going to be context. I'm going to import the intent. And main activity class.java, and we're going to have to close this activity so that when the user clicks on the back button, it's not going to reopen. So context as activity dot finish. else, let's just create a toast. Make text, context, and here wrong credentials, and toast dot short show. Alright, let's test everything out. Let's run it in our application. It's gonna take some time. Basically now it should only display our main activity like this, which is normal, because we need to fix something here. And for the column modifier dot fill max size. See how that looks like. There you go. Now we're gonna go to the Android manifest and copy the intent filter here and move it to the login activity. Export set it to true. Let's rerun the application, and it should start with the login page first. There you go. There's the login and the password. The user could navigate with the buttons here as we have configured. Remember. So the wrong credentials. Let's change this to admin. And there's the homepage. If we click on back, it gets closed. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to share them in the comments box, and I'll see you in the next one.